Hello again, whiskey friends. Welcome back to the Whiskey Riffs Lounge here. This is Kelsey, and if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're not new, welcome back. So glad you guys could join us for this whiskey videos and also all of the support that you guys give us. We really appreciate it. So today we're going to be talking about some budget bourbon slash whiskeys that should always be on your shelf. Some of these I've had to revisit over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's been a little while since I've gotten into some of these. So I'm really hoping that you guys will tune in. And I know you guys are going to like these because they are favorites, but also I think you should revisit these because I think you're going to be surprised by the outcome of retasting some of these whiskeys that may have just been sitting for a little while. So let's get this party started and we'll get into the nose and all of the good stuff. Welcome back, whiskey friends. Today we're going to be talking about some semi-budget, I guess medium of the road pours as far as price, but premium value. These are two that I have on my shelf all the time. Now, I don't always go to them all the time, but I'm going back to these more and more, realizing the further I get in my whiskey journey, how good these whiskeys actually are and the value that they bring to the market. The first one that we're going to talk about, these are both from Wild Turkey. The first one, I bet you can guess, is going to be Wild Turkey Rare Breed. Now, this is their bourbon, their barrel proof bourbon. This one comes in at 116.8. This is non-chill. Actually, this one is chill filtered. They make a non-chill filtered version of this as well. And then we're going to jump into the rye just a little bit later. But let's get started with the bourbon first. So let's get into the nose. Cheers, you guys. Oh, man. I forgot how good this thing is. Caramel, baking spices, a little bit of sweet oak, citrus, a little bit of citrus I always get on turkey. It's more of the zest of the citrus than the actual like oranges. My God, that's good on the nose. Trying to think that there's something particular too that I always get on turkey, but particularly more on this one. And I think it's more of the caramel notes that come across sweeter on this one as opposed to the 101. So let me take a second sniff here and figure out what it is, what's going on. Yeah, I think it is the sweeter version of the caramel. The baking spices and citrus are really up front and forward as well. For 116 proof, it doesn't really come across super ethanol-y on the nose, but it's definitely that consistent turkey profile. And what you're going to find in Rare Breed every single time is a consistent profile. These guys are the best at consistency in regards to what it tastes like every single time on these Rare Breeds. So let's go into the palate and we'll break it down on the front, middle, and back. So right up front, it's hitting with me with all this sweet brown sugar, caramel, baking spices. And then on this particular one, this one's pretty far down the bottle, a little over halfway. I'm getting some sweet tobacco notes, which I don't typically get, particularly on this particular bourbon. But yeah, it's a little bit of like sweet pipe tobacco on the nose coming through as well as the palate. Let me go in for another one for the front one. All right. Second sip's a little bit more consistent. The tobacco note's not quite as prevalent. Could be something that I just drank too. But it does have all of those caramel, sweet caramel and citrus notes up front. And then on the mid palate, it just really coats well and it transitions to the finish. Now, guys, for this price, you cannot beat this kind of experience, in my opinion. So it's very viscous. Color on this thing is really, really good. There you can see it. It's dark. Um, it's non-age stated, but again, these are probably coming across at 6, 7, sometimes 8 on the years of the whiskey in the bottle there. So on the middle of the palate and then the finish, the more you're drinking it, you're getting more acclimated to some of those notes of the sweetness up front, and then in the mid and back palate and the finish, you're getting all of the oak and spice, which transitions. And man, this thing has a finish on it. It's still going. It's very coating, but it's not overwhelming like you would think it would be for a barrel proof whiskey. This drinks, in my opinion, a little bit under its proof, but at the same time provides a complex um, experience that's been basically crafted over years and years and years and years of consistently blending these things. So on the finish, let's go one more time. Man, that's so good. If you guys are not drinking this thing, you're missing out. Like I said, I can get this for under $50 where I'm at. It's always on the shelf, always available. This is such a good whiskey. It's mouth coating. It's everything that I want in an experience with my whiskey. Let's check the scores now. If you guys are new to the channel, before I get into the scores, we fill out a particular Google sheet every time we review a whiskey, and a lot of these analytics go into the final score. So there's things revolving the flavor, the experience, and the value. Multiple questions for each of those. But here's how this one broke down um, score on the bourbon. So flavor score is worth 40% of the total score, which is 87.5. The experience for me was an 86. It's very, very, very high. The value score is really high. Overall, it scored an 87, which is excellent. Like I said, if you guys are not drinking this, you're missing out. If you haven't drank it in a while, go back to it. I really think you're going to be surprised by what you find out in the experience that you're having consistently with this whiskey. And do I plan to buy another one? Absolutely. This is so good. It's always, like I said, it's always consistent. And it's one of those bourbons that I absolutely go back to when I just want to, I know I'm going to get the consistent experience, just sit down, and drink and just enjoy without having to analyze anything, because I know what it's going to be there is going to be knockout. So that's the bourbon. So let's move to what the rare breed rye. Now, this one seems to be a little bit harder to find for most people, but it is becoming more and more available since they released it. This is what the rye looks like, and the rye is coming in at 112.2. So it's a barrel proof rye. It is chill filtered. The only one that I've seen the unfiltered or non-chill filtered is on the bourbon. I haven't seen one of the rye yet, but that's typically on imports only on the rare breed bourbon. So here's the rye. Let's get back to it. Let's jump into the nose and see the big difference here. Man, if you thought citrus was on the bourbon, man, this thing is just chock full of like candied orange to me. I mean, it's just citrus up front. It's sweet. It's like if you took a citrus pill and covered it in sugar and then lit it on fire and caramelized it. Man, this thing is amazing on the nose. And at 112, it is very approachable on the nose. It doesn't have a lot of alcohol vapors on it. This has been sitting for just a few minutes. I didn't pour it very long ago. Now you're getting some more of the rye spice into it. The more that I smell it, a little bit of spearmint as well. And those would be like citrus, spearmint, and rye spice up front. A little bit of the floral notes on it, but not too much. And let's go in for the palate on the front of the palate and break this down. Okay. Yeah. The palate follows the nose. Candied citrus up front. Then it moves into that rye spice pretty fast. And then it's very coating. The finish is still going. For rye, man, this one's got a pretty long finish as well. It's coating the glass and my palate pretty well. This is one that I love making a cocktail with, not because it's not a good whiskey, but because it's a great whiskey. And it cuts through and stands up to anything that you could put on it, as well as the 101 Rye, same thing. This is just a little bit more complex to me than the 101. Yeah. Let's go back to the middle of the palate. So the middle of the palate's a little bit different. It starts on the outside edges of my tongue and then comes in rather than the middle and going out. A lot of the rye spice, still sweet up front. That hasn't changed. But in the mid palate, the rye spice goes from outside to in and then finishing with just a little bit of the oak. It's a really, really good, complex, but at the same time simplistic in its approach. I mean, it's one of those whiskeys that I think that will continually, as Rare Breed does me, surprise you for the value. I'm seeing this thing for around $65 is what I see it for. It's going to be, I think, between 5 and 6 year old rye. It's our 4 to 5 year old rye, excuse me. And it's just one of those that you'll continually go back to if you get it. And it will become, I think, one of your favorites. If you are not a rye drinker, this is one to try. It's not so far rye forward that it's off-putting in any way. It is a little bit more floral and spearminty up front than the 101 rye, but in my opinion, it brings more to the table as well. So let's look at the Rare Breed rye on this and see how it's stacked up. So we're looking at a flavor score of 82.5, an experience score of 80, a value score, again, a very, very high 90, and an overall score of 82. So again, this is an excellent pour. If you guys are seeing these and passing them up, man, grab them. If you haven't tried it in a while, go back to it. I'm telling you, these are some really solid whiskeys that should always be on your shelf. And I know I've heard whiskey tubers say that so many times, and I can find it anytime I want. But trust me, there's going to be a time when you probably can't find this, or when you want to find it and you don't, and you will be mad at yourself for not picking it up. So with that being said, thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I'm going to be doing some more budget pours or things that I feel like are incredibly good values for your money. And again, these two are two of the best as far as that goes, as far as experience and flavor and complexity, as well as what you're paying for it. So until next time, you guys, cheers, and we will see you again here in the Whiskey Riffs Lounge.
Jeff, just be friends with me, but you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me, but you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me, but you have these whiskey